Okay, let me know if you can see the screen. Can you see everything?
Yes, Hadas.
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you to everyone for coming. So in this session, as you all know, we'll take a high-level look at what is the world of UX writing. And to be honest, a lot of the things that we'll touch on today could be in and of themselves a presentation or even a course. So just take this as information as a base for diving deeper into the subject. And I'll just give a few words on how I came to be a UX. But instead of digging into the earth, you might say, I chose to dig into products, discover their secrets, and share them in documents. So like many of us, I started in completely unrelated fields, and it was basically just circumstances that brought me to writing. So my relationship with technical writing has spanned, I'm giving secrets here now, but more than 2 decades, from Motorola to NSO, which is a cyber intelligence company, and finally to AppsFlyer, which is an attribution analytics company. And it was while I was at NSO that I started to do UX writing, even though I didn't actually realize that it was UX writing. And when I moved to AppsFlyer, the position formally involved knowledge-based writing and UX writing, which I think is something a lot of you are facing right now. But it was only when I moved to Fiverr and thereafter to Honeybook that my position solely focused on UX writing. And as was mentioned, right now I'm enjoying a long overdue sabbatical with a little bit of excitement on the side. So what we're going to go over today is a look at what is UX writing, how is it different, why it matters, UX principles and practices, a lot of which would be shared with technical writing. Principles for like the principles and best practices, and writing for everyone. In that sense, it'll be just a touch on accessibility and localization. Collaboration, which is very important when you're part of cross-functional teams. We'll take a look at what should be in your toolkit, how to measure success, some ways to build a portfolio, and then we'll wrap it up with some questions. So as you all know, it's been a bit of a trying week, so I don't know if I feel 100% prepared for this, but I will do my best. Okay, so the aim with this section is to set the stage for technical writers making the transition to UX, or for those of you who are expected to do UX in addition to the technical writing role that you already hold. So along with UX design, UX writing shapes a user's experience in an app or web. So though the word craft seems somewhat pretentious, in truth, it's actually an accurate term, because the decisions that we make about words are decisions that involve design, logic, and emotion. We consider the user's goal, their state of mind as they're moving through a user journey, the actual design layout, and everything so that the users can engage positively with the product. And that means we're also keeping in mind what the product and business goals are. A smooth and interesting design flow with clear and conversational copy leads to happy user and high retention. So the word churn is not one that we want to come up in conversations. And these are just a few of the text types that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So I just want to touch on this because oftentimes the word microcopy comes up versus UX copy or UX writing. So there are many opinions on this, and I'll offer my take on it. The marketing-like persuasive or emotive copy that appears at different conversion points where we want to nudge the user into action. So if you think about the sales funnel, it could be a lead capture page or a pricing page, or even a repurposed 404 not found page that will send them back to their shopping cart or the home page or somewhere similar. It could be encouraging button copy, a playful opt-in message. There's a lot to do with the voice and tone of branding. UX copy, on the other hand, I consider it to be more functional and neutral, although it still will reflect the voice and tone of the company. But it's focused more on usability, clarity, and navigation. And it's what makes the interface intuitive and frictionless for users. So it could be onboarding navigation, menu names, and so forth. So in a nutshell, I see it as microcopy bringing the users on board to a product or system, while the UX copy is what actually keeps them there. So the required writing skills for tech and UX are pretty much the same, and I've been in both worlds. The differences, I see them as arising more in terms of the types and focus of the writing, as well as the intended audience and their immediate mindset. So none of these will come as a surprise. Outstanding writing and editing skills, a user-centric mindset, collaboration. It's more in the differences. I think the striking difference is more in how the audience needs what we write. So for instance, technical material often falls into, okay, these are of course generalizations, so nobody like hold me up to all of these, but you have reference material versus real-time actions that need to be completed then and there, or product focus versus the need to consider the psychological impact on the user during an ongoing real-time journey. Then you have detailed and practical style of manuals, say, versus engaging copy whose tone could actually change from screen to screen, not dramatically, but there can definitely be differences, encouraging, complementary, so forth. And the targeted audience themselves, say if we take technical documents, they may have varying skills, but they have this. Whereas if you take a UX app, like if you take an app or a website, or it could be a system that has many, many features. So you've got users who, like a wide range of users, you've got varying familiarity with the product. They have totally different goals. There might be some features that somebody doesn't use at all. And then you have just people who have a mixture of technical and online skills and confidence. So both of us want to ensure, or both disciplines want to ensure, a positive user experience, but the online products really have to take steps to avoid churn, like drop off, users who drop off. And of course, when it comes to tools, both have their tool sets, but they look somewhat different. So now let's consider reasonable and expected responsibilities for a UX writer. I'm talking about a writer, not a lead, not a team lead, manager, director, just a writer. So UX writing is more focused on and effective when it's done in collaboration with cross-functional roles. Though to be honest, it's like that's a perfect world. It's not always easy to get buy-in. Some people think we just write nice words and they don't realize the implication of copy on users. And this is something that eventually we can inform them using the thing that they respect, which is data. So we want to craft clear, user-friendly copy for digital interfaces. And this can be anything from buttons and menus to tooltips and more. And something that is a real time saver is that if your company has a design component style guide, you might want to volunteer to, in all of your free time, to write default component copy that can be reused and maybe just with slight tweaks each time. So this will lead to consistency and it should lower labor efforts. We need to maintain a consistent style, voice, tone, terminology, etc. And this comes through developing and maintaining a style guide. Whether you're supposed to do it or not, this is expectations and bandwidth, and it needs to be worked out with the powers that be. And something that is our responsibility and that we need to do if we work with a product team is to conduct periodic content audits. So it's to review the existing content for consistency and so forth. But again, if you work with 1 to 2 product teams, this is feasible, but as in many cases, you might be providing copy for even 10 teams. So doing a content audits is not a feasible, shall we say, pastime. Right? Okay, so then from your personal task-related responsibilities, we can go into project responsibilities. So many companies have only a single writer. So keeping up with tasks and collaborating is not a simple thing. So we do want and need to collaborate with product managers, designers, developers, UX research, and localization if you have them if you have a localization team in your company. We want to consult UX research because we need to hear what they've learned about user goals, pain points, and needs in order to shape and improve new or existing copy. We want to improve copy based on internal feedback and user testing. And we want to see how users interact with product, often using a Figma prototype. We'll speak more about Figma later, as well as user feedback, reactions, questions, and so forth. And something that's very, very popular in companies are A/B or even C/D tests, in which users are presented with different versions of the same text, and you check to see which one performs best and make iterations and improvements accordingly. So now we're going to look at what all of us need to have, especially as a sole writer in a company, which is superpowers. So we spoke about this, strong writing and editing skills. It's great if you can understand both. I mean, you need to know UX writing as well. It gives you a common language with the designers, and it makes brainstorming more effective. You have to have system thinking in the sense that you need to see and understand how a change here in the user journey will affect something that happens later in the user journey. Research abilities, and I'm not talking about UX research, I'm talking about you and copy. You need to find the time to go and do competitor research. So on similar products, so that you can check which terms and trends are currently popular. Then there is communication. You need to be a communicator. We need to put ourselves forward. Nobody's going to come looking for us. And if you're the only one in the company, you could be overlooked. So you need to explain content strategy in terms that stakeholders can understand. You don't need to be the fly on the wall in a meeting. You need to put up your hand and be curious. Ask why a script, like why did you put that screen in the flow? Okay, I don't understand it. Like you can say, if we do this and this, it might not be needed or it should be tweaked. And you need to be flexible because there are revisions all the time, and there can be compromises that sometimes, like you always have to advocate for the user, but sometimes you may need to compromise due to product or business goals. On top of this, we have our own sort of personality superpowers. So one of them is empathy. We are the advocate for the user, especially when it comes to edge cases and stress moments. We need to be flexible and calm and zen, because there are always requests, always delays, always changes, always iterations. These are not bad things. These are just things that happen, and we have to be prepared for it. Thick skin is definitely a bonus, because you have to be able to handle feedback and what should be constructive criticism. Don't take it personally. And I can guarantee you that everyone who reads your copy will have an opinion or two. The patience of a saint comes in handy for the aforementioned reasons of needing to do research, write versions, get feedback, test, iterate, and so forth. As in tech writing, you have to have the eyes of a hawk, no typos, inconsistencies, because this can confuse users and essentially damage your credibility. Think, for instance, about a finance, legal, or health app that has mistakes. Not like there could be legal repercussions even. And lastly, a sense of humor, because it helps you deal with feedback and with iterations. So though quite an overused term, we do need to be team players. We need to align, we need to meet with the product manager to align product and user goals, roadmaps, priorities, designers to ensure that the copy works with the UI and UX. UX writing, like, don't underestimate the power of UX writing. It can influence design decisions. UX researchers, we have to build a connection with them to get access to feedback and testing results so that we can iterate and make that copy better for the user so their experience is positive. Developers, it's always good to have a good relationship with them because sometimes small tweaks can be made if you have a good relationship with them. And on top of that, you need to understand technical constraints that exist for a certain feature, character limits, and dynamic content. If there's a localization team, ensure that your copy is not going to break somewhere down the road. And when it comes to technical writers, UX writers don't need them, but it can work the other way around in the sense that when they're writing a guide or a knowledge-based article, there'll be some, for instance, sometimes they end up with access to an old wireframe, so they're actually making mistakes. So the reviews are very important, but you need to make sure that you're looking at the latest version of the product. Even better if you can get a prototype so you can work your way through it. But it's very important to understand the flow and get make sure that you are clear on everything that the feature does and why. So it's on us, the people writing UX, to be proactive. We have to, don't wait to get invited. Invite yourself to a design sprint. There may be pushback from some stakeholders at the beginning, like, for instance, some who only rely on data, but eventually you'll be able to show them the data. Set up a weekly meeting with the product manager and even a twice-a-week meeting with the designer. And you'll use that time to clarify open issues, intents, like go over success metrics, discuss wireframes, like the prototyping. You don't want to be just given a text block to fill. You are, like, your role is much more integral than that. You need to challenge the content in the sense that you have to advocate first thinking. User comes first, keep the flows simple. And as noted earlier, to initiate content audits and offer rationale for your copy suggestions. If it's a simple one, the developer might do it for you if it's not going to break the design. If it's something more complicated, you'll have to get the go-ahead. So now we're going to take a look at the principles of effective UX writing. And many of you will see parallels with tech writing. So use user-centered language. We need to consider real user needs, behaviors, frustrations, and we address them directly as you and your to make it more personal. Keep the copy clear by using straightforward, plain language, and as much as possible, not as much as possible, you must break down and simplify complex ideas. Be concise. We want sentences that are short and focused, and that all fluff has been removed. Be consistent. Sorry, something jumped here. We need to be consistent by referencing the company style guide. When you stay on brand, Users develop a sense of familiarity and loyalty, and it gives them confidence. In addition, we need to be contextual to provide information relevant to the user's specific place in their journey. So that could be, for instance, a helpful tip to keep them moving along. We need to make our copy actionable. This creates a sense of immediacy and engagement. We need to be inclusive. I want to stress here, I don't mean in a California kind of way. I'm talking about language that considers diverse audiences, such as those with accessibility needs. Like avoid idioms and phrases that won't translate well. You could even create improve a user relationship by humanizing terms and conditions and disclaimers. And very, very importantly, this is like one of my loves, is make it accessible. You need to use plain English because you do have users who may have cognitive disabilities or they're even not native speakers, whatever the language is, I'm saying English. Don't use directional text because a screen reader, somebody who has sight issues, does not know what's below and above and right and left is. No dependency on colors because a large percentage of the population suffers from color blindness. Use alt text for images. And the information architecture is very important. Clear structure, formatting, and tagging for screen readers. So now best practices. We're aiming for a grade 5 to 7 reading level. We're using plain English to keep it simple and accessible. We want familiar conversational language. Keep it short and specific. Use sentence case. So studies have shown that this improves clarity and readability. If you use title case, then that slows down the reader. So maybe for buttons, you might want that to be in your style guide. All caps should be avoided in most cases. We want to keep to the active voice because it encourages the user to keep moving forward, and to directly address them as you or your, because it's more personal and direct. And positive language. We want to frame messages in a way that encourage and motivate. Now, more best practices are you want to front load your key information, which means put it at the beginning for quick understanding, because I can promise you that most readers or most users don't read the copy at all, or they just glance at it and then 1 or 2 steps later, they're stuck. So front load that information. Make it scannable, just as we would in a tech document, break it into chunks and use white space. Write actionable error messages. And I'm specifically mentioning error messages because we want to provide solutions to users who are already not in a happy state. So we need to help them understand, resolve, and move forward. Use numbers, like actual numbers, instead of writing out the word because it's scannable and it uses less space. And test copy with real users. Test and iterate to get feedback to make sure we're meeting their needs. Now, there's no to a few things. So no vague or ambiguous language, which means avoid conditionals, double negatives. Like I've come across cases where it's like a don't do this in order for this to happen. And I feel like I need to make some kind of a mind map to follow what it is I'm supposed to do. Avoid sayings, jargon, or technical terms. And as an example, it's the title of this slide. This is not something that you would use in your copy. Avoid the passive voice. There are a few exceptions, the primary one being that if the user screwed up in some way and you want to avoid placing the blame on them, so you write it in a more roundabout way. But otherwise, it can confuse and just make actions harder to follow. Exclamation points. If excessive, they can be seen as unprofessional or create an unnecessary sense of urgency. And then we have all caps, which, as we all know, this can be perceived as shouting and they're harder to read. And in terms of accessibility, screen readers will often read these as acronyms. And you don't want an intelligent, capable person with sight issues to have to sit there and listen through things like ALLCAPS. So Another reason to avoid all caps. I wish we were doing this face-to-face because I would love to hear how many of you are actually working with company style guides, but this is an essential document that unfortunately many companies don't have. Like, I mean, true corporate monsters do have, but startups or even can a company after 10 years be called a startup? They often don't. And I can say that I actually wrote style guides for 3 companies when I worked there. And that was AppsFlyer, Fiverr, and Honeybook. So the challenge in preparing a style guide is fitting it into your daily work schedule and also getting other just as busy people on board as well. But if the document is going to work and lend itself to a consistent and unified voice, then it needs to be used by everyone. And that means marketing, UX, technical, those that write emails, and so forth. So you need to collaborate and create, share and maintain. And I mentioned this earlier, it's a true bonus if you can sync with the design component library and get your default placeholder text in there in order to cut down on labor in the future. Or for instance, I promise you, sometimes the developers will come across an error and they'll write the copy because, it's simple. They don't need to consult. And if they can do that by referencing an existing example copy, then there's a greater chance that the language will be correct and in line with the voice and tone. How do we speak? So your company style guide houses all of the information on how we speak to users. Your brand voice might be friendly or professional or a mix of the two. Your tone has an emotional scale, and it can vary in UX copy from something that's informative, like an error message, or your home screen might have a daily funny tip of the day. So what needs to be inside? So you've got your brand, voice, and tone guidelines. You've got grammar, punctuation, and formatting rules. These are, the Bible of UX writing. You've got your accessibility and localization recommendations. It's not a huge list, but there are some essentials that people should be aware of. You've got your terminology lists, your preferred language, your do not touch language, like for instance, the company name, or words that have been banned. And ideally, your component copy with default text. This is already the 3rd time I've mentioned it. This is a game changer. So always consider where your user is in their journey and what their mindset is likely to be. They could be in an onboarding flow, filling in a form, amused by a tip of the day, informed by a tooltip, or unpleasantly surprised by an error message. Your copy lets the user take an action, recover, feel confident. Preventing confusion builds trust. So we're going to go through a couple of examples here. Empathetic writing helps build trust and an emotional connection throughout the journey. So, for example, the classic, as we've mentioned already, error messages. The user is surprised, confused, frustrated, and hopefully we don't bring them to the point where they're actually angry. So we need to keep it plain and simple so they can recover and move on. I can't stress this enough. Don't stress the user. So here are some examples. The ones in the left, they're real, like I entered them myself, but they're real examples. So you've got something that looks like a developer did it. Error, invalid input. Please re-enter your credentials or select forget password to reset. Too much information. Or you've got that sort of marketing trendy thing that was going around for a while where it's like, whoops, something went wrong. Try that again. Not helpful. I still don't know what went wrong. Or we can take another approach. Enter your username or password, and then we give them a link that enables them to move on. Then we have simple and concise writing that helps users quickly understand what to do without extra effort. Users gain confidence in and with the system, and that's what we aim for, to reduce the user's stress and cognitive load. So here's an example of a tooltip. Save current document to server. Click below to save. Okay. Or we can just say save and review your travel plans. That's the tooltip. And I might add that server sounds very technical. Below is not accessible because somebody who can't see doesn't know what is below. And click doesn't work for apps, which you would tap. So you would use select as a generic version. Then we have please click on the button to submit your form. Okay, but please is not needed. It just takes up space. There's actually no physical click on action. And submitting their form, I'm sure they know what they're doing. So we can just take all of that and just simplify it into something like this. Being brief shows respect for the user's time, while clarity ensures that nothing essential is lost. The goal is to be brief, but still use all the words necessary to convey a message. So don't let anyone convince you that it has to be short, 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 short. Yes, it does need to be brief, but you still need to use all of the words that are necessary to get the message across. And that's something that you might have to have conversations with the designer about. You might have to find another solution. Maybe the tooltip isn't enough. Maybe you'll have to do an info block, but that's something you need to work out. Don't let them push you around. Admittedly, when writing for mobile apps, sometimes we are presented with hard stops like character limitations and space constraints, and those we'll have to work with. But there's a very good reason for it because it's a mobile app and it's not a web screen. So here's an example of a toast. Not horrible, but your changes were saved and can be viewed here. So again, here, close your eyes and read the word here, and you're not going to know where that is. So another option would be your changes were saved, which is the essential piece of information. And we give them an on-the-spot way, a link, in order to go and see where these things were saved. Consistency in language, structure, and terminology helps users form reliable mental models. It supports orientation and builds confidence. It could be something as simple as you have one screen that says next. The screen after that says continue. The one after that says next. And the one after that even uses an arrow. So we really need to be consistent, not because it's like crucial they won't understand, but it's a reflection on our attention to detail and how important we think it is to convey things to the user. So same words for similar touch points throughout a product. So here's an example of something that we see all the time. So sign in. Okay, that's fine, sign in. But maybe login is better. And why? Because when somebody is first introduced to our product, we might ask them to sign up. So there's no reason why we shouldn't separate those two terms. You sign up to the product, and then thereafter you log in. So I hope you guys can see this clear enough. Take a look at this particular example, and we'll do a quick audit on it. So just look at the text at the top. You have the less important are the two fields. It's more the copy around it. Again, this is why this would be nice in person so that we could actually discuss it. But okay, so I'll start. Create a new account. It's all in lowercase, which is strange, but is it a title or a link? Forgot password. Okay, and here they're using title case, which if it's in their style guide, that's fine. But then not a member yet is using something close to camel case, where it's like kind of an up and down capitalization. Presumably they're links, but there's no distinguishing color or underline to set them apart. Then we have the sign in button, but it's associated with a login title. So, and then that brings us back to not a member yet. Is it in an intuitive location? Then we have the positioning of the or with and the icons. There's a pretty big physical gap between the two. And lastly, in terms of accessibility, you have the different font colors and weights. So you've got gray and black, and gray is much less accessible. Okay, so then we have direct task-focused language that guides users towards the next step in their journey. And it's our job to minimize ambiguity and friction to help users complete actions efficiently. So let's look at this button for a travel app. Initiate 30-day travel period. Okay, I got it. I understand what it means. Not really friendly, but then you could switch it around and say it's free. Start your adventure. And then just to confirm that it's free and how long it is, you can stick some helper text underneath. Though in terms of accessibility, it's better to put it before so that the screen reader comes to it in progression. Then you can find the settings in the top menu. Okay, helpful. It tells me where it is, but you're telling me what to do and where to find it. And of course, top menu is not accessible, whereas you could just simply make it a link. I click here and I go to settings. Then you have buttons that confuse. So here's copy. Confirm permanent deletion of selected item. This action is irreversible. I'm already shaking in my boots. So, and then I'm presented with delete or cancel, which are two negatives. To make it simpler, you might want to switch that around. Do you want to permanently delete this travel plan? And then talk to the developers and get them to put in a variable so that you can actually put in the name of the travel plan. In this case, I chose Cyprus. And then very, very clear, delete, don't delete. Or if it fits your style guide, yes, delete, no, don't delete. I favor the upper one because the lower ones just make the buttons bigger. Your writing needs to adapt to where the user is in the flow. And this makes the experience feel relevant and human. So context-aware content helps users feel seen and supported at each step. So in other words, help appears at the right moment in the journey, providing information that's needed at that particular time. So take a look at this particular example of copy. So this is an interactive walkthrough highlighting a key feature. But man, oh man, is there too much text here? I can promise you that 90% of the users will not read it. All of this text, I looked at it and I turned it into this. Everything that's on the left side is now on the right side. I just didn't repeat it 2 or 3 times. You've got input fields. So again, read your words and of course get other people to read them. But here you've got a field that says year of birth. Okay. But then they have enter the full year in which you were born, which is essentially saying year of birth in a longer way. And then they give an example, which is great. But you could also take that and just say enter the year as 4 digits and give an example. Or you could use placeholder text, which indicates year, and put an example below it. The last example is a progress bar, which shows a user's onboarding completion status. There are a fair number of issues with this one, so I'd like you to take a moment and see if or what jumps out at you. There's a lot of text there, so I'm giving you a few seconds. Okay. So much of what I point out here goes against principles, and if they had a style guide, you would hope it would go against that too. So first of all, the user journey. The subtext, like the 3 lines of subtext here, indicate that it stays static regardless of where the user is in the flow, because we see they're at advanced feature, yet it's let's show you around. What's unclear is you have basic feature and advanced feature. So it's like I'm doing all of this onboarding for one feature of each kind, or is this just simply a spelling mistake and it should say features? On top of that, you have the inconsistency of title case as opposed to sentence case. So keep it consistent. Then we have these confusing arrows up here. Oops, sorry, jumped. So in the corner, you've got what looks like an expand contract arrow, as well as a signing out arrow. Not 2 things that you want to be side by side, it's just asking for mistakes. And then in the corner, you have a back arrow and a next word. So pick one or the other, but no need to mix them together. Then we have the use of the emoji, followed by a comma, followed by a word that's capitalized. So this is this is a grammatical issue. And then style-wise, you've got this orphan word stuck there with a period after it. Then you've got the company name, lowercase, company name, uppercase. Then a spelling error, no hyphens and step by step. And just in general, it's a very long sentence with questionable comma use. So 3 lines of text is a lot. And really, is it needed? Do you need to say, let's show you around? It makes the user the passive participant in this relationship. A better understanding doesn't exactly inspire confidence. And then we have the button Start Product Tour, which is incorrect if they're already at the advanced feature stage. So I took a second, I jumped into the website of the company, saw what it was they did, and this is not perfect, but it just gives you an idea that you're almost there. Get new clients using code that simplifies your onboarding flow. You don't need the company name, they know where they are, it's also at the bottom. And then the button can simply be Finish Up, which would apply to pretty much every stage, or Back to Tour. Okay, now we're going to take a brief look at accessibility and localization, because literally each one of these is a presentation or a course. Just as principles and best practices are good for both users and the company, so is accessibility and localization. And this is seen from the term curb cut effect. If you're not familiar with it, think of a sidewalk that's been cut out to allow wheelchairs to go across. At the same time, able-bodied persons completely benefit from this. Somebody walking with a baby stroller, a suitcase, a cart. So pretty much everything that you would do to make a product more accessible will benefit all users. In addition to that, you have legal issues. You have the American Disabilities Act, and you also have the European Accessibility Act, which can have legal repercussions on your company if you don't adhere to the guidelines. Then you have WCAG, as it's strangely pronounced, who have developed, they have guidelines that were developed to make digital content accessible to people with disabilities. And their 4 guiding principles are that it be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, which comes out as an acronym of POUR, which doesn't really sound that great. And on top of that, there are 3 levels of conformance, and like single to AAA, with the industry standard being AA. So in other words, we want to write for everyone, because like for instance, somebody who doesn't have a disability could have a temporary disability. You could have broken an arm. I don't know, something could have happened with your eyesight. So that's why I said before, everyone benefits from accessibility approaches. We need to consider assistive technologies like screen readers and people with cognitive issues like attention disorder. And always follow UX principles and best practices. So that's the entire accessibility course in one slide. Then we have localization. So localization is adapting and customizing a product to meet the needs of a specific market for its language, culture, expectations, laws, and so forth. We need to consult with the team, use plain English or whatever language to make sure it translates better, avoid coined words, which cannot be translated, and avoid culture-specific references. So very quickly, this is an example of Yelp, the review site's Turkish campaign, and they failed on a number of scores. First of all, the image. They put an image of a church that looks like it belongs in New Hampshire for a country that is 96 to 99% Muslim. And on top of that, the subtext refers to the Trojan horse, which was an ancient humiliation where the Greeks invaded a Turkish mainland city using that Trojan horse. And then they have that bizarre little ending about high-fiving a silkworm. So it's like, okay, Turkey has a silk industry. I don't know if everybody knows that, but certainly China has a much larger one. And Gender neutral suggestions noted here have nothing to do with the inclusivity of, let's say, as it's presented on Western university campuses. Rather, it's an attempt to avoid language complexities. So gender neutral phrasing and pronouns and nouns and possessive just make it easier to make your copy more universal. It's important to use relative pronouns because when something is translated, the addition of those that, which is, and whose can focus the translator, like it reduces errors. Avoid noun strings, like for instance, if you start off with the word draft, I don't know, regional documents. So are you talking about a noun, a draft document, or are you talking about draft as in write it? So these things, if a translator is getting strings, they're not going to have any idea. Use numbers because there's no gender. In many languages, if it's written out, it has to have, like, the surrounding words have to reflect the gender of the number. And it's just essentially it takes up less space as well. Scannable, less space. And consider the length of your translated text versus the original. And there are pseudo-localization tools that can be used to mimic what the target language is so that you can see whether it will break the UX design or not. So collaborating as a UX writer. My experience here in Israel is that most companies, aside from a few big ones, have maybe 1 to 2 writers. So you're more than likely going to be a member of the design team. So you'll be the one writer with, in my last company, it was 8 to 10 designers. Take a look at the content design process. So again, you need to be proactive. We need to join, participate, act. Get yourself into those kickoff and discovery sessions because that's where you're going to learn what the user problem is, business goals, and any technical constraints. Review research and insights. Identify those pain points. Align on voice and tone. Offer content strategy input. Contribute to naming discussions, define key copy goals, what you see as the user, what the user needs and when and why. Work with designers on wireframes, along with being fun. You're there from the get-go. It's a collaboration. You will write that initial copy for the wireframes, and you'll identify copy needs. Like you might actually be suggesting to the designer that they need to add certain component elements, which I think sometimes in India you call them articles. And align with cross-functional partners, and that'll be the PMs, the designers, the developments, and so forth. So what are your tactics? You need to join early and speak up. So frame your participation as not that I just need to be there, but I want to make sure that the language supports the user flow from the very beginning. Co-create with the designers. You'll use shared Figma files from the get-go. So you're there inside the design, seeing how it's developing and changing, and interacting with the designer and the PM on the copy. It's your job to champion the user. So ask things like, say, how will this screen feel to someone seeing it for the very first time? Like, have we prepped them enough to understand what they're going to see here? And you can make, like, once you gain some familiarity with Figma, and it's not actually that hard to become adept at it, not designer adept, but that you can still create designs. Create quick sketches and lo-fi mock-ups of your suggested copy and share before and after examples so that they can, because believe me, if you write new copy, no one's going to remember, yourself included, after 2 days, what the original old copy was. More tactics. Be the source of clarity. Help the team decide what should be text, what should be UI, and what should maybe be removed entirely. Suggest wording variations based on the A/B tests and consult with the UX research team because you need to get the information that they've gathered. Advocate for content systems, so you can bring in voice and tone guidelines, reusable patterns, real-world examples, and follow through. Don't disappear. Make yourself available to post-sprint, in the post-sprint to refine copy, manage reviews, Document decisions and highlight how content contributed to usability and clarity. You, along with advocating for the user, you need to advocate for yourself, because if you're the sole writer, there is nobody who's going to do it for you, because even your manager is going to be the design manager and his focus is somewhere else. So how should we frame your role? There are certain, like, I'm not saying you have to say this word for word, but I'm here to help users succeed in the interface. I think about structure, sequence, and clarity. Let's figure out what the user needs to know and when. We can reduce steps and friction through clearer language. Remember that you might not only be the sole UX writer in the company, you might be the first one. So people simply, it's not nastiness or lack of interest. They simply don't have a clue as to what you do and what your discipline is. On top of that, there's a need to address misconceptions. So, for instance, explain how language shapes the layout. Suggest quick collaboration to avoid rework later. And reframe as improving usability, not style. So what should we put in your toolkit, or our toolkit? Excuse me a moment. So how do you benefit from having the knowledge and skills that you'll find in your toolkit? It increases independence and your credibility. You can integrate into design and product workflows. You become an essential and expected participant. It strengthens your credibility as a UX team member. It improves your job market competitiveness if you ever decide to move on. And in terms of work benefits, you can collaborate seamlessly with designers, PMs, and developers because everyone is in those Figma projects. It reduces friction and duplication by working where the team works. Like, for instance, if you are asked to fill in the blanks, essentially, and you write the copy and you send it to them in an email or whatever, a Slack message, you never see how it fit into the space that was allowed. You don't see if an orphan word was created. You don't, like, you have to be able to see it in the design in order to know if you need to make it fit the space better, or once you see it in place, you realize that, okay, the words made sense on the basis of the information they gave me, but it doesn't fit in once I see the entire screen and the before step that brought me to the action that I'm writing about. It improves speed, quality, and visibility of your work by reducing the back and forth, and it ensures consistent, tested, scalable UX copy. Have I convinced everybody? So now some of the tools of the trade. So I've mentioned this several times. So you have a great collaboration tool in Figma. It makes your content part of the design and not an afterthought. You write the copy directly in mockups, or you can actually create your own mockup if it's at a stage where the design isn't even ready. And you can add comments for real-time feedback and smoother handoff to developers. One tip about that, though, is that because you have so many people in there, you can end up with endless comments. You can hardly see the design for the comments. So a strong recommendation is that once a comment has been handled, close it out. It can always be reopened, and it can always be referenced in the history section. So keep the design clean, and when you go in, you'll see what comments are actually relevant and need to be addressed. Then you have collaboration and mapping tools like Miro or FigJam. It lets you show your strategic thinking and not just surface level text work. You can collaborate online or not with cross-functional teams. And you can use it for journey mapping, brainstorming, user flows. I'll give you an example. So that's something that we did and was very effective. We'd have sort of like a live jam session. You get all the contributors together at the same time. You know, some could be in the same room together or online. The topic is set out. Everyone gets virtual sticky notes for writing comments, ideas, and so forth. The moderator goes through our comments in real time, groups them, sets them out on a page that's already been set up with different squares. The goal being to narrow down the suggestions and hopefully draw a conclusion to begin a new path. I won't go into this one too much because I probably most people are familiar with Confluence and Notion. The main, it's a centralized, you can centralize your guidelines, your writing principles, and you can make your work visible and searchable. The main thing that I have to say is that it's a depository and it can very quickly get out of control. In my last company, they had to bring in outside experts to listen to how people wanted to use it and reset up the platform because it simply became a rabbit hole of information. Like, it gives me nightmares just to think about it. And many different kinds of version control tools. So we use them to track changes, reuse content, ensure accuracy across platforms and features. And it's also useful if you have design systems or that many mentioned component library. So how do we validate our copy? We've learned the principles, we've learned how to work with people, we've written the copy, and now we want to see if what we're doing is actually getting the job done. Because we want it to show impact, and that could be increased task completion, reduced drop-off, less support tickets. We want to support our design decisions, and that means moving the copy we write from our personal opinion about this is what it needs to be to a data-informed choice. We can prove it. UX writers can tie content changes to key outcomes like increased signups or reduced form abandonment, which is a classic. Metrics can show where the language is failing or succeeding. We can identify problems. Behavioral data and user feedback can point to confusing wording, unclear instructions, or an inconsistent voice, all of which can be fixed. And we want to strengthen our cross-functional collaboration. And when you and I can speak data, then we're creating and building trust with the people who rely on it, like the product managers. So what is success? It's user being able to complete tasks, reduced errors and hesitations, increased engagement, a lower bounce rate, positive behavior during usability tests. Like, for instance, you'll be watching them and they'll be saying, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, okay, that's easy. So all of this is providing you with information. On top of that, fewer support tickets and complaints, improved conversion and opt-in, increased trust and satisfaction, correct usage of a feature, and retention or repeat use. So all of these things, all of this copy that you're writing are great for the user, but if it's good for the user, it's good for the company. So what do we need to watch for? It's users struggling or hesitating. You'll see this particularly in moderated sessions. Are they hitting stumbling blocks like error message that they don't know how to proceed? Are we being supportive, respectful, and appropriate to that particular moment? Can users complete forms, navigate steps, or set up a feature without guessing? So now we'll go through a few pages. It's like, again, this could go on for hours. So we'll just sort of highlight the different categories of types of tests. So you have usability tests. And as I mentioned a moment ago, you have moderated usability tests where a facilitator is observing users and asking follow-up questions. And if you look in that image and you see those other heads, so that would be you and I being there quietly, not talking, not asking questions, but just observing what's going on and getting a feel for how our copy is being used, like being appreciated or not by the person being tested. Then you have unmoderated tests where they do them on their own and the screen and the behavior are recorded. These tests, users fill in missing words to evaluate the clarity of the text. This is more based on information architecture. And then, of course, you have eye tracking and heat maps, where users focus or miss critical messages or locations in the UI. These tests are quantitative and compare user behavior between two or more versions of the copy. So A/Bs measure which version of a text performs better. And this one evaluates whether users click the correct link or button to complete a task efficiently. These focus on user opinions, perceptions, and emotional responses to copy. So you can see, like, having a cross-section of these tests, if feasible, gives you a wide spectrum of information. So preference testing, the users compare 2 or more versions of copy and say what they prefer and why. Or this one measures whether the tone and language match the user's expectations and emotional needs. Again, always within their place in the user journey as they're moving through the system or product or feature. These are often used post-interaction to gather user impressions of clarity, usefulness, or tone. They can ask users to rate the content clarity, confidence levels, or emotional response after using the product. And then we have the much flaunted word of metrics. So tracking metrics helps UX writers make data-informed decisions, prioritize work, and demonstrate the return of investment of content. So we've got the classic one here, say, like the volume of support tickets. This one would reflect task completion rates, drop-off rates, time on a task, error rates, and so forth. In this category falls the NPS, which is a Net Promoter Score, or qualitative feedback. And lastly, this one is like it's like view and bounce rates. How if searches are effective, click to copy, or interaction with tooltips, like if they interact with them. So here's one example of how like your metrics might have shown you that this wasn't received well, and it wouldn't have been. Initial setup process. Please complete the following configuration steps. It's like not the kind of conversation you would use over coffee with someone. And it's a travel app. So this can be changed, of course, always in light of the voice and tone, but welcome aboard. You'll be on your way in a few easy steps. So you see the difference between one being borderline scary and the other one being, it's like, oh, okay, this sounds kind of nice. Okay, now down to the nitty gritty. We're going to, this is like building your portfolio. Sorry, we've gone a bit longer, but I hope you'll stay with me for a little bit longer. So is it needed? I suppose it'll just depend on what it is you're looking for and what a company might be looking for. But what it does is it shows your process and how you think, not just how you write. It demonstrates your understanding of principles and problem solving. Some companies may expect it as well as a test. Probably there will always be a test. And it may even get you to an interview stage faster. I just want to mention something about tests. If you're ever asked to do one, and you probably will be if you look for a job in this, make sure it's a take-home test and not go into the next room and do it, because UX writing is not something that you just churn out. You're interviewing for a certain company. You need to look at their website, sign up for their product if it's free, or have them give you access, do some onboarding, etc., to get a feel for how to write the copy suited to that company. So again, it's this should be done essentially at your leisure at home. So some practicalities when it comes to preparing your portfolio. What's needed? You should include an overview, so briefly describe the product or feature and how you solved the issue. The issue itself, describe the pain point or the business challenge. Mention any research and discovery that you did. Could be competitor audits, content testing. This will all depend if you can use something from a company you're working in, or if you're choosing something completely independent. And don't forget, you can always borrow your friends and do user testing on them. Discuss your project, like show your process, early drafts, iterations, how you worked with others if you did, and mention tools that you might have used. Include before and after shots, that's for sure. Outcomes, include metrics if there are some that's relevant. And if you have no hard data, you can get qualitative feedback from those tester friends you used. And reflection, show growth, challenges you overcame, what you would have done differently. You can be honest about that. It adds like a certain level of humility. It shows you're capable of self-reflection. Remember, if you're doing this, it's to get a job. So you show them what they need to see. And you might also want to mention some extras, which could be some content style decisions you made. Mention specifically how you took localization or accessibility into account. Like, this is like a process, and like, these are some of the highlights. So then how do you share it? This is a matter of personal preference. So it could be, if you have a personal website, you might want to use a PDF, Google Slides, Notion, Figma, or normally they're paid for, but a UX portfolio builder. Now I'll just give you a few examples of what you could choose to be your target subject for your portfolio. So this is one of my favorites. It's to use a live website, one that you're familiar with. It could be a travel site or your bank portal. And what you want to do in this case is, like, go to the browser, do inspect HTML, modify the content, take screenshots of the changes you made because it's the only way to keep them. Annotate the screenshots with your explanations, like the before and afters, and always document the process. If you're just going to go for screenshots, so you'll screenshot an existing web page, for instance, or a flow, and you'll mark the screenshots with your rewrites and your reasoning. Just remember to keep it brief, because just as users don't look too hard when they're in the website or in a flow, it's not for sure that HR is going to look too closely either. Provide context, and as always, document the process. Another one, if you're feeling adventurous, is to create your own feature or app. So you are going to want to use a free wireframing tool, create a flow and write the content, focus on, say, tone, clarity, and consistency, test it on one of those friends, and of course, document the whole thing. And another option is to use open source tools. You can approach a maintainer of one of those and see if they'll be on board with the subject, improve and document the process. And lastly, you can maybe repurpose some of your own technical writing. So you've done onboardings and product FAQs and so forth. So you could just convert them into something that's UX-y in terms like create a wireframe, create and write the flow. Like you had the onboarding steps in your doc, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So take those and create a flow that reflects it. And of course, document the process. So the last subject is job expectations. And I've experienced this myself, no doubt many of you have. And it can be pretty frustrating and overwhelming. But like, whether you've chosen to move into UX writing or you've been obliged to do it, it's important that everyone have realistic expectations. And we have to exercise self-protection. Though, of course, I admit this, it's easier said than done, because if we want a job, we want to keep a job, we need a job, these are all factors. So often there are too many demands on the UX writer. Like other roles require separate specialized skills, yet they expect us to do them. It could be as a UX writer to write technical documents, or vice versa, to write marketing copy, content strategy, UX research, SEOs, localization. So we need to know when to stand our ground. UX writing, if you've gathered until now, has unique emotional and interactional demands that suffer if you, the writer, are spread too thin. So clarify reasonable responsibility and scope, and educate teams and managers that UX writing is its own discipline. We are not there just to fill in the blanks. And be honest with yourself. Are they asking too much? Can you handle it? Which leads us to healthy boundaries. Like, collaboration is welcomed, it's needed, it's essential, but you are not meant to do the work of other disciplines. So focus on UX and language quality while you partner with those other experts. And we'll just take a quick look at a real life job description. I was actually asked if I wanted to interview for this job. I used the fact that I'm on a sabbatical, but it's just too overwhelming. For instance, okay, UX writing, that's great. You know, write copy, work closely with the design team, maintain style guides. That's all expected. The job was also for technical writing. So you have to collaborate with the other technical writers. I guess it kind of was a bit mixed there. Craft in-app help text. So let's say, you know, from the get-go sort of thing, create documentation, collaborate to develop, maintain user guides. So that sounds like a bit like ownership. And then you had these subjects. So you needed to oversee content creation management. This sounds like ownership. Develop and maintain help FAQs, etc. Again, it sounds like ownership. Monitor and improve per user interactions, which takes us more into research. Monitor the effectiveness of the UX writing and help. Improve. It's like just a lot of asks going on here. And this is like one job. So reasonable aspects of this were to write and improve the UX copy, maintain the style guide, define voice and tone, and collaborate with cross-functional teams. The overscoped things from that list were own and develop UX writing, all of the tech writing duties, build and manage in-app help systems. I mean, that sounds like a specialization in and of itself, and monitor metrics and gather user feedback. Okay, I'm sure there must be a support team and product managers out there as well. So we're not going to go through all of these, but these are all the red flags that come up from this job. And if I just take one of them, on the like slow project delivery or burnout on the part of the UX writer, the company itself, a lack of measurable results and high turnover costs, because eventually you're going to burn out and you're going to leave. So in a perfect world, the role is currently scoped. The employee will struggle. The company will fall short of its UX+++ goals, and the product will have inconsistent content quality. The solution, again, in a perfect world, would be to reduce the role scope and add additional team support. So for those of you who are still with me, thank you for staying. Just to review, we looked at what is UX writing, how UX writing principles improve your copy, the importance of accessibility and localization, collaborating as part of a team, what to add to your UX writing toolkit, and practical portfolio and job advice. There are a few resources here, which you can I can share it with you afterwards as well. But a great one is the UX writing library. You'll find a lot of information as well as some free mini courses in the UX writing hub. The actual paid for courses tend to be extremely expensive, but there's some free mini ones. So. And the Hemingway app that I put at the end there is a great tool for checking. It also does grammar checks as well, but it's a great way if you have maybe a larger block of text to check the reading level of your copy. And that is that. So thank you very much. And feel free to contact me. And if there's anything particular in this presentation that you'd like more information on or clarification, then feel free to contact me. And that is that.
Thank you so much, Hadas. I mean, so much of information. And as we discussed, overflow of information, lots for people to gather and learn. So I'm sure it must have been very useful for them. And I think we have some time left. We will try to take some questions. And so we have some questions, actually a lot of questions, but I will take some. So one basic question is, what is the difference between UI and UX writing? Do they both refer to screen elements?
Okay, I don't actually see a huge difference between UI and UX writing, like copy. The user interface is where we're writing the copy. The UX copy is the copy we're putting into the user interface in order to get the user to go through the flow. I think the distinction falls more for the designers themselves, because you have UI designers, which are actually a dying breed. They would deal with the physical appearance of the interface, whereas the UX designer would deal with the practicalities, the nuts and bolts of the flow itself. But more and more and more, it's the expectation is that one designer will take into account the appearance of the UI as well as the nuts and bolts of the flow itself. So for us writers, there isn't a difference between the two things.
Thank you, Hadas. Next question is a very interesting question from Suhas. This is for you. You have worked across B2C, B2B, semiconductor, and even cyber intel spaces. How does UX writing differ across these domains, and which challenged you the most as a writer?
I have to answer that right now.
You can skip or answer later.
I think there isn't a huge difference between them. Like once you take into account who your audience is, it's always the principles and the best practices. So that applies to everything. In the cyber intelligence one, for instance, that was a government customer. These were government customers. So these are people in stressful situations. So you want to keep it very police-minded. I don't know how to describe it, but it's very practical and not particularly conversational. It's like they have something to do and they need to get it done. In terms of all of them, in terms of complication, it really differs because some of them are much bigger systems. Like some systems were simpler, some of them were like that word I used before, a rabbit hole. You would just go in and it would that's why I said that you have to prepare your copy for all types of users, because there are some users that might use like 10% of a system, and there are other ones that would use 50. There's probably nobody that uses 100. So the bigger the system, then the more complicated. And if there's like legacy in there that you're building on, it's like they don't have the bandwidth to redevelop it. So you're trying to write copy that will fix bad design. So it's kind of shifts. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much for this answer. Now we have a, I think, kind of simple question. I'm not sure if your resource list already covers it. Still asking, if a company doesn't have a style guide, how does one start? Are there any recommended style guides and online resources for UX writing?
Actually, in the resource section, I think I put one there.
Yeah.
But there are there are lots of companies that are proud of their style guide, like corporate companies, and they publish them. So there are lots of references out there, but you have to pick the one that is going to reflect the voice and tone style of your company. So you're not, for instance, I don't know, if you're like a really conversational type company, you're not going to go to the Microsoft style guide, which is, falls more on the drier side. So there are lots of examples out there. But I've never heard of a company actually adopting another company's style guide. So you might use it as a reference, but as I said, and I can't say it enough, every company has to have a style guide. So, I mean, even if they outsourced somebody creating the style guide, like that would be the fastest way to get something done, because that person can then contact other people and that's their only job, is creating the style guide. But that's like without a style guide, you will forever, like I mentioned to you, Puneet, yesterday that one company I worked in, I could go into the user interface and I could name the person who wrote the copy. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Like you're supposed to go in and feel the company, not feel the South African or the American or whatever.
Sure. Yes, I think the question's background is coming from the comparison between technical writing and UX writing. Like in technical writing, people had Chicago manual first, then right now MSTP is there. So probably the reference is something more related to that. Great. So thanks for this answer. Now we have questioners about microcopy. How do you measure the impact of microcopy on user behavior beyond standard A/B testing, especially in low traffic or complex flows?
You can, like if it's a complex flow, like you can only test what you've decided to test. So the only thing that off the top of my head, that's sort of the easiest way to find out where the copy is failing, for instance, is support tickets. So if you have like, endless support tickets on a certain part of the system, then you know that there's a problem there. And then you can focus on that area and get the UX research team to look at that particular part of the flow. So, because if everything was okay before and it's okay after, but that's where tickets are coming, that's the one that you should focus on. But but aside from A/B testing, I mean, you have lots of other ones. And I mentioned, I will say a bit quickly, but I mentioned them. So that's something that people can go back over. And again, it's in terms of choosing your testing, it's all a matter of bandwidth. It's like, do you have a research writing team, a research team? I don't know how to put this, like, if the team exists, you have to get the information from them. You have to find, like, you have to do that within the bandwidth of what it is that you're doing. But it's like a lot of people involved in testing. So the person who's actually probably really managing it is the product manager, because they're the one in the end who has the responsibility for a certain feature or section of the product.
So, yep, a few more questions, others. So there is another one about, I think probably the answer will be in style guide, but still I will read the question. In large teams or organizations with multiple UX writers, how do you ensure consistency without stifling creativity or flexibility?
Okay, so technical writers, I don't think creativity is supposed to be a factor. It's, also with UX writers, we're not supposed to be creative. We're supposed to write what is good for the user in a particular circumstance. So our creativity comes with our interactions with our colleagues in terms of collaboration. For instance, if for some reason the design comes to me later, but not too late, then I can go over it and I can sort of feel for the user and make suggestions that can then be adapted. There's no, like, that whole thing about creativity, that takes me back to where I said I could identify certain users in the user interface, certain writers in the interface. You're not supposed to be creative. You're supposed to reference a style guide and work within that framework. There's no, if you want to be creative, then I guess you need to start writing, like, spy novels or something.
Yeah, more into the novel mode. Great. Yep. Thank you. And so just and how can okay, one interesting question about AI we have, but I think there is another question. If UX writing isn't included at the start of a project, how do you advocate for its value and improve the content later?
So I'm not 100% sure I understand. It was like, it's what,
so
if there's a project, then there's a designer. So that means UX needs to be part of it. So if they mean that all of a sudden somebody comes knocking on your computer screen and says, you know what, I have some things I need you to fill in the blanks. Can you just like write some nice words for me? So if that's what they mean, then it's the things that I talked about. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to like, don't sit back and wait for anyone to invite you to a meeting, because it's not going to happen. You, and especially in the example I gave, if you're the first UX writer in the company, half the people don't even know what you're doing there. So you will be in the design team. You will know who the product managers are. And you'll have a relationship with the designers because you're in that team. So, and always there are at least one weekly where the designers are in a group session and everyone's saying what they're working on. So you just need to build a relationship with the product managers as a start, and the designers. And you don't ask to be invited. You say, when is the kickoff meeting? When is the next sprint session? When are you doing a grooming of the backlog? So you ask those questions. It's like, it's one of the images I put up, proactive, not reactive.
Right. Thank you so much. We do have two small questions, it appears. Do you want me to take it or shall we skip it? We are 3 minutes
No,
ahead of time.
I'm fine. The skies are quiet right now.
Yeah, thank God. Okay, so I think one part of this question you already said how to advocate for a UX writing role, but the question is from a different perspective, AI. So now if the company feels or the people there feel that content can be put together easily by using AI. So how do you propose a UX writing role in a project then?
Okay, that's an excellent question, and it's something I should have addressed, but then we would have needed another half an hour. So AI is a fantastic tool, and it's not something for us to be afraid of. It is something that will only help with our work and increase our bandwidth, if anything. But when I was like in my last job before I took this break, I used AI all the time, but I could never, ever rely on it 100%, ever. Like it never gave me, look, they can be like things are developing every single day. They can be trained. You train it to understand your voice and tone and so forth and so on. So it will get better and better. But the degree to which it will be able to comprehend, like, I don't know, maybe they can actually, like, I don't know yet if you can upload a Figma to the AI so that it actually sees the flow. I don't know if it's capable of reading the flow, but you have to feed it all that background information. And again, you can train them, but it still doesn't know what the issue being addressed is until you tell it. So it can produce options, give me 10 versions for this scenario, but a human still has to go over them. A human still has to figure out what's the best. The design can change all the time. So it might give you an answer that was good yesterday, but it's not good tomorrow. So it's like, yes, AI is wonderful. We don't need to be afraid of it, but it's not just it yet. Hopefully it never will be, but
Yeah. Yeah, at least I think there was some question also about can prompts from ChatGPT or something, can that help in creating UX writing messages? And I'm sure it cannot. So
it can help. I mean, it can help. Like when you say that, I don't know, let's say I want to create a tip of the day that the users will see at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I want it to be funny. I don't want it to be more than too long, like so many characters. You have to tell characters, et cetera, et cetera. It can definitely save you time. I mean, if it gives you 10 different options, you definitely, like, even if none of them are perfect, it will give you ideas that you didn't think about. I don't know, like taking your dog for a walk in the morning or whatever, but it'll give you also, like, and also too, you can tell it to be humorous or not so humorous. So it definitely is a fantastic tool.
yeah, it will certainly provide you options. Whether those are applicable to the job or not is a different story.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's all the question. Nupur, I did not get the question about is designing naming convention for the company product more of UX? I did not get Nupur the question. So
well, for instance, if you're talking about naming of new features, or for instance, maybe you're creating a new menu and the menu has names in it, or even little like info boxes explaining what's in that menu. So like there are things that are named new features, like that's definitely something that we should be part of, because you don't want them to, I don't know, name it frog and it should have been chicken. I don't know. But it's the sort of thing where it's like naming are words, and words is us.
Any words on the UI,
Yes.
it's UX writing.
Yes. Like one of the things you have to fear the most, and I mentioned this, I think, at one point, are the developers, God love their souls, but that they come across a certain edge case and it's sort of like, yeah, I'll just write the copy. And then afterwards, if it comes up, there'll be a support ticket on it because nobody understands what the solution was.
So true. Great. So that's all. We have the questions, and thank you so much for your detailed responses and elaborate session. It was very helpful, and I'm sure people must have got a lot of insights. And So thank you so much for your time, and
Pleasure.
what we wish you a very safe time ahead.
Thank you. And I'll just reiterate that if anyone has some, particular questions that they would like to ask, or like more detailed information or something they'd like to share, then they're free to contact me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So all of you can freely contact. I mean, LinkedIn ID is there, and right now, recording link we will be sharing in the email. There also we will provide the LinkedIn profile. So please connect to her. And yeah, but we do have one UX writing WhatsApp group. In case you want to discuss further, feel free to join that also. So that's all. Thank you so much. Thanks, Hadas. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.